Hello and welcome back to this series. Last video, I believe I forgot to tell you what HTML actually stands for and what it does when we created this index page. And HTML actually stands for Hypertext Markup Language. It is the language that you use to actually structure your website to how you want it, and afterwards you style it to how you want it to look like. So imagine HTML as like the bones. If you're thinking about like a human, HTML is kind of like the bones. And later on, we'll go through CSS, which is kind of like everything else in the body. So if you remember, we've had, for example, we had a header at the top. So let's just start making those boxes, those divs that I was talking about. And this is kind of how you do it. So, like I said, everything that you want to be inside of the page that you want to see goes inside of these two body tags. So for the first thing, we're going to make the header. So back in the day, we used to do something like div, and then we gave it an ID of header, for example. These days with HTML5, they made it a lot simpler to where we could just do header. And we want to close that again. So in between here is where you'd put your header. So you'd put your logo here, you put your navigation here, and all that kind of thing. And inside of this header, we are going to make another box for our navigation. This box won't be visible. I mean, it will be at first, just to give you guys a visual representation. But later on, I'll get rid of those boxes, and it'll just be just the navigation links to make it aesthetically pleasing. So inside of here, what we want to do is do nav for navigation, and go ahead and close it. And in here, if you guys notice, I'm putting boxes inside of boxes. This is called nesting. This is very, very important concept in HTML. This is how you essentially lay out your website to how you want it to look like. And back in the day, again, we didn't have these nav tags. We used to have to do, again, div, and I give an ID of nav. But these days, all we gotta do is just do nav, and that's it. Now we will create a CSS page to style it. Now, CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheet. So, like I said, CSS is kind of like the everything else of the body, and these are the bones. CSS is what makes your website look nice. It looks pretty, right? So, what we want to do is go in here, or whichever text editor you're using, and just create a new folder, and we'll call it CSS. And you don't have to make a new folder, you don't have to do it this way, but I do this just because it makes it look a lot cleaner and easier to navigate. So because we can have multiple CSS style sheets, for example. So inside of here, we want to make a new file and call it style.css. So you might be asking, how would this page talk to this style sheet? And you do that by doing this. So under the meta tag inside of the head section, so any CSS, any JavaScript, any of those kind of files that you want to link to your HTML page will go inside of the head. And I like to put them at the bottom after the meta tags, but you don't necessarily have to. So here we will make a tag. It's going to be called link. And then rel, this is like the type of pages. It'll be a style sheet. And then type, we'll do text/CSS because it's a CSS page. And at the end will be the actual link to the CSS page. So we'll do href, which is where it actually links it to. And it's inside the CSS folder. So we'll do CSS for the folder /style.css. So this is the folder, and this is the actual file, which is this one right here. We're going to save that. I'll actually close that and save that again. And we can go to this one. Now, with Atom, they make it a lot easier to do all these things. So you can just grab this, drag it, and drag it to the right side, for example. And here you have both pages, and you could work on them at the same time, and it just makes it a lot easier. So we're going to want to reference this header tag somehow in this navigation later on, because we're going to want to make this like a visible item on the website. So I'm gonna go ahead and open this in the web browser. Just give you guys an example. So we'll open it here. Now, as you can see, there's really ignore that. There's really nothing here on this. Nothing here on this page. Jesus. The way you can call things in CSS. So CSS is basically just a bunch of lines of code right after the other. That's how CSS kind of works. And so you can call, for example, the header tag or the nav tag. You can call like just a header or nav. And we also got things like divs, which I'll go on in the future. So for divs, it's always a pound sign in front of it, and then the name of the div. So let's say header. And also we've got classes. So it's a period for the class. So period header. The best one to use for this, because it's a HTML5 standard and it makes it a lot easier, just use the header one. It just makes it a lot simpler for you. So let's get rid of all these. So for CSS, when you call it, as soon as you call the header, we're gonna want to put opening curly brackets, and then Atom will automatically close it for you to make it easier. And just press enter. And in this here, in between these two curly brackets, is where you'd put your code. And for CSS, let's do this. Let's do max width. Let's do 1400 pixels, for example. And this is how wide the box is going to be. So it's going to be, so if your monitor is 1080p, which is 1920 by 1080 pixels, this will kind of be like just a, I like to call it a new standard, but that's up for debate. So this will make the box, and we're going to want to do margin 0 pixel auto. And what this does is it takes the box and centers it in the middle of the screen, so it's not off to one side. It'll be the left side if we didn't have this. You're going to want to save this. Now when we go into the website that we opened, nothing happens because there's no visual representation. So what we're going to want to do is give this box a border just so we can see it. So we'll do border 1 pixel solid black. So it's going to be a border. It'll be 1 pixels big. It'll be a solid line, and it'll be black. And that's how that syntax works for CSS. So if we save that, go into a browser, you see just one line, right? Now you're gonna say this is not a box, and you'd be correct. So just to make it look like a box for now, we're gonna get rid of this in the future. But in the next line, put padding. Actually, we'll just do padding top of, let's say, 80 pixels, something big for now. And padding is kind of like the spacing that is inside of the box before the actual content starts. And you can use padding in many different situations, but for this, I'm just using it as a visual guide to give you guys a better idea of how it's going to look like. So save that and open it and refresh the page. And here you guys see an actual header. Now it's going to look quite a bit different in the future, but for now this will do. And now we're going to want to make the navigation, right? So navigation is going to be like right here. So go back in here, and if you see the headers here, and there's a nav tag inside of here. So let's call that. Just put in nav, and then opening and closing, and then enter. And in here we're going to do something very similar. So for this, I'll just do a width of 40%. Now, you could do pixels, you could do percentage, you could do EM. For this example, I'm doing 40%, which means it'll be 40% of this box. It'll be like maybe like this much. And again, we're going to want to do a border of 1 pixel solid. Let's make it green so it'll be easier to distinguish. And we'll do padding as well. I can't type pixels. Alright. So save that and then refresh the page. And you see the box right here. Now, you're gonna ask me, why is this box on the left side and why is it jumping down and making a new line? And that is because there's padding here and there's padding in here as well. So we're gonna want to get this box on this side because navigation is usually on the right, correct? So I'm gonna go back in here and to float right. So the float text just makes the box, the div or the box, stick to the side you want it to. So for example, ours is going to be the right side. So save that, refresh. Now it's doing something weird here. It's putting the div, or it's putting the navigation below this, even though this box is inside of this box, right? And that is a weird issue that I don't know why they did this, but you have to what's called float your or clear your floats. So since we floated the nav, so under the nav we're gonna make a new thing, a new tag. We'll call it let's see, it'll be a div, and we're gonna use a class for this because when you use classes, you can use in many you can use classes over and over again. Like you can call them over and over again. Divs, on the other hand, if we made a div, you can call a div only one time in a single page, in a single website. So because we're going to use the class multiple times, we're going to use a class for this. So we'll call it a class of clear because we're going to clear both of them. And go ahead and close that. To make it look nicer, we're just going to do that. So in here, in our CSS, we're going to call that class. So it'll be .clear, because if you remember I said classes, you always use a period in front and then the name of the class, which is clear. So .clear and then opening closing, and we're going to do clear clear colon both, and this will reset it so where the box will be actually inside of the other one. So save that and open it in here. And just to make this look a little nicer, we're going to get rid of the padding in here and just put the padding in here, make it a little bigger, and there you go. So there's your navigation and there's your entire header. Now the reason that I took the padding out of this and just put it solely into this, because the navigation is inside of the header, the header's height is set by whatever's inside of the navigation. And because the navigation has a padding of 80, that means it'll stretch the header to be 80 pixels high automatically, unless we set it so by ourselves. So for example, if we did height 100 pixels, that will no longer be true because we'll set an actual height. But if we don't have a height, it'll be automatic and it'll be because of whatever is inside of the nav, if that makes any sense. If it doesn't, please tell me in the comments and I'll try to explain it a little better next time. So this all might be confusing, and it'll make a lot more sense in the next video. This one's going on a little bit too long already, and look forward to that. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you for watching.